I- I'll just share my screen. There we go. Let me know if you can see my screen and everything's working. Perfect. So yeah, Stephen, thanks for the introduction there. And as you touched on then, my role at Program is to work with our end users and work strategically to ensure that their workforce are protected. So it's the last presentation, and we're going to be touching on the last line of defence. So we've all had great presentations today, and you would have seen on the hierarchy of control, PPE does sit at the bottom. So fantastic presentations, and it is important to ensure that all of the other key points around the hierarchy of control are covered, but PPE is there as a protective measure for the individual. So here are a few of the points that I'm going to be covering off today. So the challenges with PPE itself. How can the correct PPE save your life? And some of you may have seen this video before, but I am going to run through a video that will give a real life case study. The testing methods used for the arc flash PPE, a bit of information around what is ATPV and ELIM and the difference, protection in layers, inherent versus treated fabrics, and a bit about low versus high voltage. But I just wanted to highlight a few statistics as well around this. So approximately around 1,000 people are admitted to hospital with severe arc flash burns every year. 30 people approximately will die from the sustained injuries. And 57% of people admit they or someone they work with has suffered an arc flash strike. Also, another statistic from the National Underground Asset Register, it was published in October 2022, says that it's estimated that a hole is dug every 7 seconds, and there's approximately around 60,000 cable strikes a year, which is quite a staggering amount considering, you know, the dangers of arc flash and the awareness that there is or there should be in the industry today. And the cost of these cable strikes are estimated to be around 2.4 billion in direct and indirect costs. So for those of you who are just joining the presentation, what is an arc flash? So an arc flash is the light and heat produced as part of an arc fault, a type of electrical explosion or discharge that results from a low impedance connection through air to ground or another voltage phase in an electrical system. Now, what does that actually mean in layman's terms? So it's when an electrical current jumps across an air gap between conductors, essentially when, or like lightning jumping down to earth. So, you know, with an arc flash, it can reach temperatures up to 19,000 degrees C, which is 4 times hotter than the temperature of the sun. And it creates a blast and a pressure wave that can damage your eardrums and even strip away garments. So here are a few questions that I would like, you just to think about at the moment. And I hope that some of the upcoming slides are a bit thought-provoking and get you thinking about the PPE practices within your organization and, maybe respectfully challenge superiors within the organization to ensure that the company are doing everything that they can to ensure protection. So is this a risk, or is arc flash a risk that your employees are facing today? Is the current PPE that you're wearing safe to wear, and is it compliant? If you have invested in the right PPE, are your employees wearing it correctly? And I will touch on this later as well. Are your company standards up to date with the right legislation and correct PPE standards? And one of the, it could be deemed one of the most important, but how are your employees finding their PPE? Is it practical for the task that they're doing? And is it comfortable to wear as well as being safe? So an arc flash, like you would have heard in some of the other presentations, but I will just recap some of the injuries that can result from an arc flash. So, you can expect potentially, without wearing PPE, skin burns right to 3rd degree from the direct heat exposure, damage to eyesight, hearing loss and physical damage, significant injury risks from flying debris, loss of memory, burns from hot liquids or oil-cooled or insulated equipment, other physical injuries. So some people may be working at height, working on ladders, or there may be pieces of equipment nearby and the blast propelling somebody onto such equipment or off such equipment. Now, we always talk about the physical injuries, but I think it's also important to highlight the issues around how it could impact somebody's mental health, not just the individual that has been impacted from the arc flash, but maybe their colleagues around them. Seeing somebody who has been impacted or having physical injuries from that incident. And just a couple of other points as well. So clothed areas can be burned more severely than the exposed skin, and I'll touch a bit more on that later as well. There's also injuries that can relate to your respiratory issues as well. So copper can be vaporized at significantly higher temperatures, and in the arc flash, it can be vaporized. And if that is inhaled, it can then solidify within your respiratory system. And I touched on the droplets of molten metal as well, and this can cause skin penetration. With regards to the hearing loss, an arc blast can cause around 140 decibels noise up to 2 feet. So that can cause permanent hearing damage. So there are many significant impacts that can cause injuries to an individual within an arc flash. So employers do have a duty to protect their employees, and David touched on a lot of the legal background on that on his earlier presentation, but arc flashes are arc flash assessments or studies, they should be carried out, and that will dictate what level of protection that the individual needs. Workers must not treat PPE as a substitute for common sense and safe work practices, which we all know that is a given. The most common and industry accepted PPE that protects the body from arc flash is arc rated clothing, and there are specific tests to give this to give specific levels of ratings. So if your staff, however, are wearing arc flash PPE, then you can assume with a degree of certainty that the risk of injury will be reduced, but not eliminated. I've touched on then the impacts of the arc flash injuries to the individual, but having an arc flash incident within an organization can cause significant impacts as well. So there's a few snapshots here from IOSH magazine online, and it just highlights the damages that can happen to an organization. So you've got the reputational damage, there are significant financial penalties, there's also imprisonment and loss of productivity as well. So again, an organisation was fined nearly £700,000 after a worker suffered third degree and mixed depth burns due to an electrical arc. Another organisation has been fined 660,000, and there was actually a prison sentence for a scaffolding company director following an overhead power line injury. So again, there's always the physical impact, but there's also the reputational and the financial impacts to the organisation as well. So I'm sure many of you listening to this presentation wear PPE on a daily basis, and we know that there are challenges around wearing PPE. And where there are challenges, it can lead to more safety concerns. So, for example, wearing heavy-duty PPE in the summer can result in other problems causing things such as heat stress. And if people do get too hot, then they may remove the garments, then it can increase their exposure to risk. So it's important when selecting PPE for your teams, you need to make sure that is the PPE comfortable. You're working 8 hours, 12 hours a day, and you're wearing this PPE for considerable amounts of time. So you need to ensure that it has levels of comfortability for the wearer. In terms of the durability as well, if a garment's not wearing well, then how are the workforce going to, have confidence in that garment and understanding or be confident in that garment being able to protect them? The ladies range, having a specific bespoke male and female range as well. So safety for all is important. Ill-fitted PPE can go unworn and can hinder the wearer's movement. And levels of protection. This has been covered in various other of the presentations today, but it's something that we always ask the question, do you know what level of protection you need? And there are, like I said, the assessments that you can have to help identify that. So is PPE required when working with low voltage? So It would be easy to assume that low voltage systems pose less of a risk of arc flash incidents, but that's just not the case. Arc flash hazard levels may actually be higher at low voltages due to the high fault currents. And because awareness among some engineers working on low voltage systems is so much lower, the risk to them as individuals could be perceived as greater due to the false sense of security. So there is a bit of a misconception that working in low voltage systems means that there's going to be a lower risk of injury. However, that is not the case. Now you'll see an image here to the right. This is actually an arc flash polo shirt that somebody was wearing back in 2016 when they struck a three-phase low voltage cable, which did lead to an arc flash. And you can see there that it has offered some levels of protection. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to play a video for you. Now, this video shows a real life example of a person who did receive an arc flash, but they were wearing arc flash PPE, and they explain how the importance of being protected. They explain the importance of wearing this PPE and how it has saved their life.
I received a call, I think it was mid to late, teammate Liam. He informed me that Eddie had had an accident and that he had suffered an injury. He informed me that it was an electric, that the ambulance were en route, that he was possibly going to go to hospital because it looked quite bad. And I said, look, let's just deal with Eddie, get the paramedics there, and then we'll start, you know, going to site and having a look and seeing what's happened. But the most important thing is Eddie and his health right now. For me personally, yeah, I was scared. I was pretty worried.
We got a telephone call from a supervisor to say that Eddie had had a cable strike. The first thing that runs through your mind is, you know, is Eddie okay? And then you start thinking about his children, because we knew we had a young family and a wife and things, and having children myself, that was my concern for Eddie. You know, is he going to come back to this? Is he going to work again? So it was quite hard. We, as a team, we all took it quite badly. Sorry. It's just thinking about it as well. It just brings back memories. So, sorry.
And when upset, the arc flash hit me. That happened ever so fast, and then everything else happened. It sort of went in slow motion. It was just these thoughts running through my head. The main one was obviously my little boy, but also obviously family, my job. Also worried about the physical injuries. I had burns all over my hands, down my neck, inside my nose, inside my mouth, around my face. But obviously, because I was wearing this PPE, it didn't touch my chest, my legs, under my arms. So my body as a whole was completely fine. It's one of the things you think, oh, it's never going to happen to me. I know what I'm doing in this game. I've been doing it years, and obviously when it does, it's a massive shock to you and your family. And it doesn't affect just you, it affects a load more other people. I drove into work as I do. Obviously I spoke to my supervisor, which quite an important job had come in. It was close to a railway line. I pulled up to site, unloaded my van, did all the usual things you should do, obviously. The site set up, Cat and Jenny. Started to break the tarmac away with a breaker. And obviously when we removed the tarmac, the ground underneath was pretty hard. We couldn't get the shovels in or get the grafters in, so the plan were to obviously break up the hard ground with the jackhammer. And unfortunately, when I was doing that, the jackhammer just threw straight into the ground, and that's when I hit the cable.
You know, we go to work, we expect to go home. That lad didn't. He nearly never went home. But I've seen the clothing that he had on that day, and you know, we need to get it out there that it's not about money. It's not how many jobs you do in a day. It's how you do that job, and how you do that job safely. But most of all, you must wear this PPE. If you don't wear that PPE, you could be dead. Just one cable strike.
Every day I'm sending these guys to go out to work in what is a high-risk job. I think this whole thing around PPE and me as a manager, but me as a person, is actually, it's about everyone's safety, it's about everyone's health and well-being, and that's kind of the way we need to start thinking about it, not as a job, but as actually a way of life, protecting one another and looking out for one another, which is key.
I can't tell you how important it is to make sure you're wearing your full PPE. It's comfortable, lightweight, and I can't see why people wouldn't wear it. If I wasn't wearing my PPE, it'd probably been a different story.
So thank you for watching that video. And I think the reason I put this in is, like I said, it just highlights the importance of wearing the correct garments. Eddie touched on then, if he wasn't wearing arc flash protective PPE, then the injuries could have been significantly worse. And I think, like we say, it's a case of reducing the risk and reducing the injuries, but ensuring that all the controls are in place to mitigate them as well. So I'm going to talk about the testing methods used for personal protective equipment, or the arc flash equipment. So arc flash protection is governed by a standard. So it's EN 61482-2. So it's a European standard that's associated with two common testing methods. And the two methods are the open arc testing method and the box test method, sorry. So I'm going to show you a short video of the open arc test. So that's one of the testing methods, and that's the arc test. And I'll show you the other one shortly, but it's important to also note that these two tests are actually independent of each other as well. Now, the tests will also provide ratings. So there are three acronyms on the screen. So you've got ATPV, which is the arc thermal performance value, the EBT, which is the energy break open threshold, and the ELIM, which is the incident energy limit. So essentially, for the arc thermal performance value, if a product that achieves an 8 cal ATPV, if it's hit with an 8 cal arc exposure, then there's a 50% probability of second degree burns. Now, I think it's quite important to actually understand a bit about this, that there's a 50% probability still. Now, this is something that isn't sometimes commonly known. So when I have some conversations, they assume that if you're wearing 8 cal, it's fully going to protect you from 8 cal. But under the ATPV and the EBT, there is that 50% probability of second degree burn. And with the EBT, that's also with break open of material. Now, one of the key points or takeaways here is about the ELIM value. So ELIM is a new mandatory requirement, and it ultimately means that there's 0% probability of second degree burns as opposed to the other two. So if a product achieves 8 cal ELIM, if it's hit with an 8 cal arc exposure, then there is 0 probability of second degree burn. So when companies are specifying their cal rating on their risk assessments, we'll always ask the question as well, is it ATPV or is it 8 cal ELIM? So that enables us to be able to make recommendations on the PPE. Now, the box test is another method predominantly specified in Europe, and two results are given from this method, including arc protection class 1 with a test current of 4 Ka and arc protection class 2 with a test current of 7 Ka. So this test is a bit more of a constrained and directed arc test, as shown in this short video. So like I said, both tests are independent of each other, and this one is predominantly used across Europe. So PPE can also be categorized based on the cal rating. So Australian Energy Council have put together this infographic that details the required PPE depending on the cal rating. So there have been some questions today talking about HV and LV, switchgear, etc. So, you know, we'd obviously have to look at the specific cal ratings and minimum specifications, but you can see here, category 1 is 4 cal plus, category 2 is 8 cal, category 3 is 25 cal plus, and then category 4 is 40 cal plus. And like I say, you can achieve specific cal ratings by adding layers of protection, but the only way you'll get a correct level of protection when garments are layered if they are tested and certified together. And more of that will come shortly about layering and how to add them levels of protection to ensure everybody is safe for the tasks that they need to do. One of the questions I get asked a lot is how to actually wear the PPE, or if individuals are wearing it right. So incorrect use of arc flash PPE will compromise its ability to reduce, the incident energy that reaches the skin of the wearer. So arc flash clothing must fully cover the arms to the wrist, waist to the ankles, and torso to the neck. Sleeves should never be rolled up. No undergarments that can melt should be used. It's very common. It's common practice that people will maybe wear an arc flash PPE or coverall and maybe a football top or joggers underneath, and that's a no-no essentially. And there is a reason for that, and that's because it can burn and cause significant injuries to the wearer. So no outside metal parts should be uncovered due to the intense heat. If you're wearing things like wedding rings or, for example, a belt, the belt buckle can burn into your skin as well. All garments should be fully fastened, so tuck it in and zip it up. Are your gloves and your head protection arc rated as well? One thing I do see a lot of is not everywhere, but a lot of companies, people may wear just the arc flash coveralls, the t-shirts, the trousers, but their hands and their face are probably closest to the wrist because of the nature of the work they're doing, and they're unprotected, not wearing arc gloves, or they're not wearing arc head protection with visors. Also, any overlap between two-piece solutions, such as your jacket and trousers, should ensure nothing is exposed whilst undertaking various movements. And do not wear non-arc waterproofs or coats on top of arc-rated clothing. So caring for your garments, this is quite a common topic as well. So there's a lot of key discussions nowadays, let's say, around sustainability as well, and sending textiles and fabrics to landfill. So instead of just disposing of the garments, you can launder them as well. And I'll touch on about inherent and treated later and compromising safety. But you need to ensure that you read the washing instructions because some garments are tested to 5 washes, some are tested to 10, some may be certified to up to 50 washes, for example. So it's important to ensure that you read the care on the washing instructions on how to launder that garment specifically. For other PPE such as face shields, then it's wise to check what the manufacturers put on there for their recommendations. And if your PPE does become damaged, so there's holes, tears, broken fastenings, then they can be repaired, or they should not be continued to be worn as well. So all I would say, it's important to regularly check your PPE for damage. Now, the next section of this presentation is going to go over different PPE and clothing solutions and how arc protection can be increased when layering. So it's essential to ensure the right garments are worn and not compromised by wearing the wrong undergarments, such as nylon, polyester, and other fabrics that can melt. So you'll see here just a short video how, it highlights how not wearing an F-arc undergarment can continue just to burn, which, like I say, will result in significant injuries. So without continuing to play that, you can see that the garment on the right continues to burn. And, fortunately, this is just a demonstration and not somebody working out on site. So protection in layers. If your maths teacher at school asked you 7 + 14 and you put 31, you'd probably got that wrong. But in this instance, when you're layering up on your garments, it demonstrates how adding them layers of protection can increase the cal rating. So air is a poor conductor of heat, as many of you probably know, and it acts as an additional layer. So these two garments achieve 31 cal, and we know that because they have been fully tested and certified at that. So it's not a rule of thumb that all polos and sweatshirts will increase, We'll provide 31, but in these instances, because they have been tested and certified. And I would always pose the question to the PPE manufacturer to ask if they have any data to ensure that when when the PPE is being specified, they can prove that that meets that CAL rating. Going to move on to inherent versus treated fabrics as well, because there are lots of products out in the marketplace, and it's important to understand what the difference is between treated and inherent. So treated fabrics, so these are made from fibers which are not flame retardant by nature, but have undergone a chemical process to add a fire resistance quality to them. So a spray on chemical protection, for example. But what happens with this is that over time, the protection levels will decrease. So in effect, what that does is compromises the safety of the wearer. Now, inherent fibers or inherent fabric, on the other hand, these are made up of materials which naturally have fire retardant properties. So they don't need to undergo a chemical process to become flame retardant, because the polymers within them, they make up the clothing, are inherent. So what that means is inherent fabrics don't lose any of its protective qualities. So you can wash the garments and that protective quality does not wash out. So for example, treated garments, you may wear a few times and launder them and that can wash out. But again, it's also always important to check what the certification is on how many washes. So just going to talk about, what sectors require arc flash PPE and the sectors that we currently work with, subject but not limited to. So, we support and work with various different industries. So, the renewable sector, so industrial electrical environments such as factories, manufacturing plants, electrical maintenance. You've got power generation, utilities, so major utility companies, anyone breaking ground, in electrical, gas and water, street lighting, the rail sector as well, petrochemical sector. And a lot of this is, a lot of the tasks involved undertaking installation, maintenance or repairs. But again, I'll touch on it, especially when breaking ground or undertaking excavations and construction, because there is such a high risk within that sector due to the fact that there are around 60,000 cable strikes per year. So here at Programme, we have around 7 considerations for end users when, considering arc flash PPE. So you probably have many questions and I'll do my best to answer them after, but, layering is key. So whilst the garments protect against arc flash, the intense heat can still melt garments underneath. So, it's advisable, or you should be wearing, every layer of clothing should be arc FR, because although it will protect you from the arc flash on the outside, the intense heat created by that arc flash can still cause your undergarments to melt. Flame retardant does not mean arc flash retardant. Again, treated versus inherent, ask the question. It's important to have a men and ladies range. Understanding the ratings, so is it ELIM? What are you specifying as an organisation? Is it ATPV, EBT or ELIM? Also, ensure the fasteners and fixings are FR and arc resistant as well. So I did mention it earlier, wearing a standard belt, if there is an arc flash incident, the intense heat can cause severe burns and injuries due to that metal belt buckle. And importantly, it's essential to be comfortable in the work that you're doing as well. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation. If you'd like to discuss PPE options, feel free to reach out. My details are here on the screen. And I guess we'll move over to questions. So thank you very much for that. I'll just get back onto Teams.